What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you live from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we're going to continue our Cleveland Browns week as we look at the current state of the Cleveland Browns. So, Cleveland week has been interesting. Originally, our first video looked at the quarterback woes, the quarterback difficulties that this team has had in recent years. And that video was depressing. Obviously, no Browns fans want to look at that and say, "Wow, look, the quarterbacks that we've had have been so great." So when I was doing research for that one, I said, "You know what? We need a positive video too, and also a pair of trade breakdowns to look at." Now, the Jarvis Landry trade breakdown's been up for a day, and people like that one. And on Saturday, we're going to release the Odell Beckham Jr. trade breakdown. But right now, we're going to look at the modern day Cleveland Browns, the 2021 season and beyond. There's a lot of excitement in Cleveland, and it's definitely deserved. The Cleveland fans are some of the most loyal fans in sports, specifically in the NFL. This team has been a laughing stock or had been a laughing stock for a decade before finally proving and proving themselves in 2020. So, how does this team currently look? The Cleveland Browns, this is going to be kind of like a breakdown position by position. And keep in mind, I'm an NFC East fan, so the AFC is not my strong suit, but I did definitely do some research for this. So, Cleveland, we're going to look at your draft picks real quick. So, in the 2021 draft, the Browns have four picks within the top 100. They have the 26th pick, which is in the first round, 59th and 89th in the second and third, respectively. And they also have the 91st pick. That pick came from New Orleans in a previously last year draft day trade. So, four picks in the top 100. Cleveland needs to focus on defense. And when we go position by position, you're going to see what I mean. They definitely have a very strong offense, and they've tried some picks on defense, but even like their free agent acquisitions this year, mostly defense. And it's completely understandable. This team's offense is ready to compete. Defense is a little bit behind. There are some pieces there on defense, and we'll get to them. Of course, you guys know Myles Garrett, but we'll get to the rest of them later. So, how did their 2020 draft go? Well, they had four picks in the top 100. We're only going to really focus on the top 100. And they were the 10th overall pick, which was used on offensive tackle Jedrick Wills Jr., the 44th pick, which was used on safety Grant Dell Pitt, 88th went on defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, and 97th was used on linebacker Jacob Phillips. So, Wills was a starter his rookie year. He started all 15 games at left tackle, so they clearly trusted him. And offensive line is definitely a strength for the Cleveland Browns. So getting Wills in the first round, he played solidly. There's definitely a bright future for him. We'll have to see how great he does, but I'd be excited if I'm a Browns fan about him. Dell Pitt, Elliott, and Phillips. Elliott, I'm pretty sure, was hurt most of the season, so he didn't do much of anything. I can tell you that much. As for the other two guys, I don't think Phillips did much either. I think he was kind of, yeah, he didn't do much of anything either himself. And it's just that's what happens sometimes with these guys. They take a couple years to get ready in the NFL. Now, as for Dell Pitt didn't have a massive role either. He pretty much suffered an Achilles tear in training camp, so he didn't do anything. So essentially, the Browns are getting like an additional second round pick this year, to an extent. To an extent. So clearly, their offensive pick there solid. Their three defensive picks much left a lot on the table. Now, they only had two picks within the top 100 in 2019, and they were both once more spent on defense, with the 46th pick going on cornerback Greedy Williams, and the 80th pick was used on linebacker Sion Takitaki of Tongan descent. So, Greedy Williams, he had a solid rookie year. He wasn't amazing, and then he didn't play at all in 2020. He suffered an injury in training camp, which ended up causing him to end his season after trying to come back like week 4, week 5, but he couldn't, so they just ended his season. Takitaki's been more of a special teamer. He has made some key plays on defense. He did get an interception in the playoff game when they beat the Steelers, so that's huge for him. That's a huge morale booster. He definitely looks like he has a future for this team. So that's the draft pick. What did they do in the 2021 offseason so far? So I'm not going to discuss the minor signings. They don't necessarily matter. They've made four bigger name signings. For to help their defensive line, they would sign defensive tackle Malik Jackson, formerly of the Eagles. Um, Jackson isn't the best player. He's going to be able to get you some pass rushing situations, and Cleveland can definitely use that. It's a 1 year deal, so he has to prove himself. Then they would sign linebacker Anthony Walker from the Indianapolis Colts. Walker was considered one of the top free agents coming into this offseason, and they got him for next to nothing, relatively speaking. They did pay him, but he didn't get as big of a deal as people were expecting. He came into Cleveland. He says he's excited to have a small role for the Cleveland Browns. So we'll have to see what happens with him. But there's definitely a lot of confidence with this guy. I definitely would be excited if I'm a Browns fan with what Walker can bring to the table. They also signed a pair of players for their secondary. They signed the always versatile cornerback Troy Hill. So Troy Hill was undrafted back in 2016, 2015, but he really made his name known for the Rams organization. He's just been all over the place for the Rams. Very exciting player. It's just I'd be pretty happy if I'm a Cleveland fan. I know he picked off Carson Wentz in week 2 of 2020. I do remember that. So when I saw he signed with Cleveland, I'm like, oh, I remember that play. He signed a 4 year deal. He'll be all over the place. Yes, he's a cornerback. He can also play safety. He can play slot corner. So still pretty exciting. They also signed safety John Johnson. John Johnson's another solid player. Once more, coming over from the Rams. I don't know what it is, why they want all these Rams players, but he's a good player too. I'd be pretty excited if I had John Johnson coming over. Safeties are kind of hard to figure out because really the only time you hear a safety's name called is when they miss a tackle or have blown coverage. But John Johnson seems like a solid guy, at least according to Pro Football Focus. So now we're going to kind of go position by position. I'm not going to go into extreme detail on the special teams because special teams, but so the quarterback room, obviously Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is one of the top quarterbacks right now in the league. He had a very strong 2020 season. He really cut down on those interceptions. The future is definitely looking bright for him. The real question is, will Cleveland, get him to sign a contract extension right now, or is he willing to keep playing on that rookie deal? I think he's going to want to play on the rookie deal. I don't blame him. I mean, we saw what he can do last year. We've seen it a lot. He's always getting touchdowns. He cut down on the interceptions. Really, we can see him play out. I think he'll play out 2021, and we'll see what he does after that. But I'd be pretty scared if I'm an AFC North fan, not of the Cleveland Browns, because Baker, oh man. And backing him up, he does have Case Keenum. Of course, Case Keenum did do a great job leading the Vikings back in 2017, but he's always been a backup quarterback other than that. So Case Keenum, solid backup quarterback. Wouldn't be shocked if the Browns spent like a fifth, sixth round pick on a quarterback just to see if they can get someone to, mature, grow themselves. Because other than Keenum, there's nobody there. Kyle Lauletta's a nothing. But now the running back room's where it gets interesting too. So they have the 1-2 punch of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Both of them are good north-south runners. Chubb's stiff arm is one of the best in the league. Many would argue that it's right up there with Cook and or Derrick Henry. Sorry, right up there with Derrick Henry as like the best stiff arm in the league. He can also cut better. One of the better cutters in the league. And then the fact that Kareem Hunt's on that team helps him too, because guess what? You have Kareem Hunt, you have Nick Chubb. They're not going to be as tired as they would be if they had, if it was just one or the other. You have all of them. You have both of them, I should say. So it's a good combination. Chubb's the younger guy. Chubb's the one with a brighter future. But right now, if you're giving Chubb 16, 18 carries a game instead of 22, 24, that's less wear on him. Guess what? Less wear means he's going to be able to play for longer. So that's a strong that signing Kareem Hunt at the time was questionable because remember he was cut from Kansas City for off the field concerns. Very good move by Cleveland. It's worked out for them. Hunt might not be a guy that's a superstar anymore, but still he does take a lot of carries away from Chubb, and it's not like you're having a huge step back when Hunt's on the field. Other than them, it's just a bunch of okay players. Like Ernest Johnson's the only other player on that team of note for the running back room, and he's more of a running back 3 at best, 4 at worst. They also have Andy Janovich as a fullback. He's a solid fullback. No one to write home about because fullbacks are kind of a dying breed in the NFL. Still, solid player. Then we get to arguably the second best position in Cleveland, which is their receiving room. And they have, of course, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry. These are both of those guys were acquired via trades after the 2017 and 2018 seasons, respectively. Both of them have done very well. Landry stepped in. He's continued to be a strong, very strong slot option. You honestly have to love Jarvis Landry. Quiet guy, comes in, does his job. Of course, on the field, different person, but he's not going to be a guy who's going to get into a lot of off the field trouble. Of course, he was upset with Miami. That's a different story, though. Still, Jarvis Landry, I love this guy. He's a strong wide receiver one, wide receiver two. Odell Beckham Jr. is more of a question mark. Obviously, OBJ has more, I don't want to say problems, but problems because he does have the attitude. We've seen him. He's gotten in many altercations. I think the best altercation he had was against the kicking net. Kicking net got a good punch on him, but that's why the Giants got rid of him. Cleveland got him for a pretty good price. That video, the trade breakdown for that will be coming out on Saturday. As I said before, the Jarvis Landry one came out yesterday. So definitely two interesting trades. I do like Odell Beckham Jr. I do love Jarvis Landry as players. Baker Mayfield thrown to them. Oh man, Baker's just got to get the ball in the hands of his playmakers and they'll do well. Of course, OBJ will be coming off a torn ACL. So there are going to be some questions with him and durability. We'll have to see. Other than them, Rashard Higgins is a solid receiver. He's more of a wide receiver four to me. He's a guy I'll have him out there on like a 3rd and 7. And if my top option's covered, I'm going to try to do a sneaky pass to him. They also have rookie Donovan Peoples Jones. And Peoples Jones fell in the 2020 draft. A lot of people were surprised. He was pegged as possible 3rd round pick. I think he went in like the 7th round by where Cleveland snapped him. You can't go wrong with that. Cleveland's wide receiver room, very strong. I wouldn't be shocked if they spend a mid-round pick on the receiver room this year. Like I said, they do have 2 3rd-round picks pretty close to each other near the end of the round. They might try to bundle some picks and move up a little bit. It's not a pressing need, but once more, Odell's coming off a serious ACL tear. Landry, he can be a receiver one, but he's better suited as a slot receiver. So you're better off just having in the in the slot. Now the tight end position is another interesting one. They really have two guys that stand out. Of course, that's their last year free agent signing, Austin Hooper. And Hooper didn't have a great year for the Browns, but he did kind of start working on his pass catching more than anything. And he worked on blocking. So Cleveland likes having a run happy offense, an offense that's good at running the ball, strong at running the ball, and they converted Hooper to do that. And on the field, looking at him from a fantasy football perspective, he really regressed. Looking at him from an on the field perspective, looking at Pro Football Focus or Pro Football Reference, any of those sites, you can see he still had a solid year. Also, they have, of course, their former 1st-round pick, David Najuko. And Najuko just didn't look that good. I don't want to say bust. Obviously, it's way too soon to call him a bust. He's still on the team, and he definitely has a spot on the team. But Najuko, as much as you want to say, I want to see him succeed. When they picked him, he was a very raw talent. Everyone kind of knew, okay, this guy is boom or bust written all over him. He hasn't materialized as much as they'd hoped, but he can still make a play when they need him to. So next we have the strength of this Cleveland Browns team as we discuss the offensive line. So of course, our offensive line last year, the majority of their starts went like this. Their left tackle was, of course, Jedrick Wills Jr., the rookie, 1st-round pick of theirs. They had their left guard was Joel Bitonio, who very good player, had a very strong 2020. Their center was J.C. Treader, not the best, not the worst. And then they had at right guard, they had Wyatt Teller. Again, another very strong season from a guard. And at right tackle, they had Jack Conklin, who was their other big name free agent acquisition during the 2020 offseason. And for the record, Teller, Conklin, and Bitonio all were 2020 All Pros. Very strong seasons from the three of them. And, Wills, like I said earlier, had a good year as a rookie. It's always tough for rookie left tackles to step in, especially on a playoff team. So you got to give him credit. Batonio is a younger guy. He still has a good chunk of time left for the Browns. He's, I think, just about 29, 30. So he still has a few good years left in him. He has made the past 3 Pro Bowls as well. So you have to be excited if you're a Browns fan. Of course, guards are never going to be heralded as, franchise savers like a tackle is. but you can't underestimate the strength of a strong guard. Once again, too, they also have Wyatt Teller, like I said, at their other guard spot. He's younger than Bitonio, and he was a late round pick by the Bills. Bills got rid of him. I remember when they got rid of him. Cleveland helped turn him around. Of course, he is a one-time All-Pro, but there's still a lot of time to turn him around even more so. Maybe he can develop into a better player, but at the same time, it could have just been, a product of circumstance. He was playing in a good system, a good spot for him. JC Treader had an okay season. He didn't do amazing. There's always going to be problems. He signed a decent deal with this team, and they just signed him to an extension in 2019. So there's a lot of positives. The big thing for JC Treader, of course, is he is the president of the NFLPA. So that right there tells you something. When you're the president of the NFLPA, you're definitely respected. And as a center, you definitely have to have some respect, because if you don't, you gotta take charge of that whole O line. And then lastly, of course, Jack Conklin of that O line, big name free agent signing. They got him from the Titans. They gave him a lot of money. Two-time All-Pro. One time, of course, was Tennessee, because he just came over here to Cleveland. He signed that big deal for 3 years, $42 million. I definitely like him. He did. I don't remember if he missed a game, but he did have a certain viral illness that placed him on the list. I remember when that happened, because he was one of the biggest names. But this team was built through the offensive line trench. And what's more, I can't see a lot of Browns games. They weren't really ever televised, especially out here in Connecticut. I was able to watch them when they played the Eagles. Oh my gosh, that O line, scary, scary. So now we get to their defense, and their defensive line has some big names. I already mentioned Malik Jackson, but other than Malik Jackson, I mean, they do have Sheldon Richardson as well at defensive tackle. He recently joined them in 2019. They got him for a 3 year deal. He's kind of fallen off the face. He hasn't done amazing. He's more of a serviceable guy, not like a superstar first round pick like he was when he was drafted early by the Jets back in 2012. But Richardson's still a solid player. He's a guy who you don't necessarily want to run at, and I always forget that he's in Cleveland just because he hasn't made as much noise as you'd hoped. Of course, the big name on their defensive line is Myles Garrett. Garrett, of course, first round pick, first overall pick in 2017. This guy, when he's healthy and he's playing, he's dominant. He was a first team All Pro last year. He had one heck of a season. Everyone knows what he did in 2019 when he was playing the Steelers. We don't want to get into the Mason Rudolph thing. That's just a mess in and of itself. But Garrett just had one heck of a season. He missed 2 games due to a certain viral illness, including the game against the Eagles, so I didn't get to watch him. But of course, I would watch the highlights after the fact. This guy, such a strong player. He forced 4 fumbles in 2020. Keep in mind, he only played 14 games. He got 12 sacks. He had 13 and a half sacks a couple years back, and he had 10 sacks last year. So it's not like it's a fluke. He is definitely someone, one heck of a pass rusher. Myles Garrett was well worth that first overall pick in 2017. You can't tell me anything otherwise. Myles Garrett, definitely a dominant force. The problem for the Browns, once you get past those starters, though, is it gets a little tough to figure out who's going to be there. I mean, they do have some interesting names. Like they have, I always pronounce his first name wrong. Takarist McKinley, who was a first round pick from the Falcons a few years back. I mean, he's really kind of just been okay. I wouldn't be shocked to see Cleveland get rid of him. Of course, we already mentioned Jordan Elliott. They also have Andrew Billings. Nothing crazy with him. So then we have their linebackers, and the Browns don't really do too much with their linebacking core. We already talked about Anthony Walker. We already talked about Takitaki, and those are honestly the bigger 2 names. Even Jacob Phillips is one of the bigger names on that team's linebacking core, and we already talked about him. Other than that, I mean, you have guys like Elijah Lee and Malcolm Smith. None of them really strike fear in your. I'm looking at them. I'm like, oh well, who, and it's not a bunch of big names. So we'll have to see what they can do with that linebacking core. They also have an interesting group of defensive backs, of course. We already discussed Troy Hill. We already discussed John Johnson. We already discussed Greedy Williams. Other than that, I mean, the only other real big name for them is Denzel Ward. Now, Denzel Ward, of course, was the fourth overall pick back in 2018, a few picks after they picked Baker Mayfield. So it he's definitely got some potential. He made the Pro Bowl as a rookie, but he's kind of fallen back since then. He was also placed on that list for people who have a viral illness or were exposed to said viral illness. And he's been a solid player. He's not somebody who you're looking at and you're saying Denzel Ward's, a future all pro, but he's still a very solid starter. He definitely has fifth year option pickup all over him. He definitely looks like a guy that you're going to see in Cleveland for a while now. They're definitely going to look at him as a potential, lock him up. He's not going to be the best guy getting interceptions, but he did much better when it came to pass breakups this past year. So there's definitely some hope if you're a Cleveland Browns fan. And then I'll just real quick, who do they have on special teams? They have Cody Parkey. Do you really want me to go into detail on that? They also have Matt McCrane as a kicker. So now, what are they going to do in the 2020 draft, 2021 draft? We'll see. Defense is my big guess. You got to go with defense. And of course, big name free agents that they have left. Carl Joseph didn't do much for them last year, was an okay starter. He's probably looking for too much money. Andrew Sendejo, I forgot that he went to Cleveland. Sendejo's a very aggressive player. He'll deliver a big hit and he'll take a bad penalty for it. He definitely would help out this team, but I think you're better off just giving a young guy the job over him. And of course, there's also Olivier Vernon. Vernon probably going to miss most of the season, the beginning of at least of the 2021 season. I don't know what he's asking for, but he wasn't the real reason why the Browns would trade for Odell Beckham Jr. He was just kind of like you know what, we'll take him too. We'll take his salary. It's that simple. But other than that, too, can't forget this team has a strong coaching staff as well. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski came over from Minnesota for the 2020 season, and he won NFL Coach of the Year. So that's always very positive. They do have some interesting guys in their coaching staff as well, other than him. They have former Eagles conditioning coach Sean Holes. So, I mean, congratulations. This team has a lot of former Eagles in the higher ups, too. They have Bill Callahan as their offensive line coach. He's a well respected offensive line coach. They have Alex Van Pelt as their OC, and they have Joe Woods as their DC. So, not exactly big names, but still good players, good coaches to have. And they also have Andrew Berry as their GM. He's a former Eagle, highly respected guy. Definitely missed having Andrew Berry on the in the organization. They also have Ryan Grigson as their senior football advisor. So he was the Colts general manager for I think 6 years, including the time right around when Luck was drafted. Yeah, he was there when Luck was drafted. So he's got some pretty good looks. He's got some pretty good potential. He's definitely not having him as a GM is definitely a positive too. So you can't go wrong with that. And you can't forget this team does have Jim Brown in there. He's like a senior advisor or something like that. So it would be really nice to see them get him a ring for when he retires. He's already, for when he's done with football for good. He's already retired. He's already in the Hall of Fame. He's 85 years old. So it would be nice to see him get a ring. Yeah. So definitely Cleveland Browns, you got a bright future. I don't like the Browns. I'm not a Browns fan in any way, shape, or form, but I don't hate the Browns. The Browns are probably one of my favorite AFC teams to an extent. The Bills are my AFC team, but the Browns are up there. They played Kansas City very well in, of course, the 2020 playoffs. They took them, I think it was 22-17 was the final score. And of course, Chiefs fans will go, "Oh, well, Mahomes was hurt." That's true. Mahomes got hurt, but fact of the matter is, you can't use that as an excuse. The Eagles won the Super Bowl a few years back with their starting quarterback done for the season, tore his ACL. The Patriots went 11-5 when Tom Brady went down with an ACL tear in Week 1 of 2008, and they just missed out on the playoffs. We've seen backup quarterbacks carry teams. We've seen it before, and it's not a good excuse. Injuries happen to everybody. They don't just happen to you. No matter how much you want to say it, they don't just happen to you. But another reason why I think Cleveland's going to have a very bright future for the next 5+ years is this: Pittsburgh is getting older. Roethlisberger probably has one, maybe 2 years left. at best. I don't think he's going to be around much longer. I think Pittsburgh's probably going to draft a quarterback in 2021, maybe 2022 if they feel risky. We'll have to see. But that team's getting older in general, and we saw a lot of cracks begin to show in 2020 at the end of the season after they started off red hot. So yeah, Cincinnati. Look, Joe Burrow looked like the real deal, but ACL injuries are no joke. You know, 20 years ago, an ACL injury was probably the end of your career. We'll have to see if he can rebound well. I have confidence in Joe Burrow. I don't have confidence in the Cincinnati Bengals drafting players to help him out. Obviously, AJ Green left the team. That's arguably the best receiver that you've had in franchise history, definitely in the 21st century. So we're going to have to see what they can do to get Burrow help. And Baltimore Ravens, Baltimore is going to be your biggest threat if you're a Browns fan, but that's a very run heavy offense. So if the Browns keep building through the trenches and just focus on the D line this time, they should be able to do better against Baltimore. Force them to throw. Obviously, they don't want to see Lamar Jackson throwing too much, which is odd. For whatever reason, they just let all their receivers walk. Really strange. Still, Cleveland Browns, bright future. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a good rest of your day.